We are to continue talking about JavaScript and working with the Titanic dataset and finding values with JavaScript, or extracting values from our dataset. In the last video, we talked about using filter, right? And filter is a method on array that returns a new array. And basically the array that's returned is a subset of the original array, okay? The last video leaves off a problem of finding all the casualties, or the people that did not survive, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the answer here, and essentially the answer is filter data and then find all the fields, the survived field where the value is no. Okay, and then we can get the length of that array, and that'll tell us how many passengers did not survive. Okay, so if I add up 342 and 549, that should give me the total number of passengers, 891. So that looks correct. Let's talk about another array method. So this method that I'm going to talk about here is map. And filter returns an array that's a subset of the original array. Map returns all the items except it transforms them. So where filter is used to filter an array, map is used to transform an array. So for example, if you have an array of objects, but you want to turn them into an array of numbers, then you would use map for that, okay? So let's try a couple problems here. So one of the problems is to find like the who paid the most on the Titanic and who paid the least. Like what was the highest fare paid, right? So in order to do that, we basically have to look at all the fares and figure out which one is the greatest value, right, or has the largest number. But in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is find all the fares, right? So it's, we could work with all the objects, but it's actually kind of easier if we just had an array of the fares, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say console log. And what I want to do is take the data and then say map, right? And map takes a callback, a function. So you'll put a function in here, right? And I'll say p, and I'll do the arrow there. And that's kind of my minimal arrow function. And actually, we don't even need the curly brackets there, right? If we're going to do it on a single line. So this is a passenger object, but what I want is I just want the fare from that passenger. So I'm going to say p.fields.fare. And what I should get from this is an array of all the fares. Okay, so let's give it a try. So I'm going to console log this, and you can see over here that now I have an array of all the fares. Now there's 890 fares here, so there's like a whole bunch, but essentially these are all the fares that the passengers paid, right? So that works pretty good, right? And then what could we do? Now we could say like, hey, which one is the greatest or which one is the least, right? So to figure out which one is the largest value, you can use math.max. Now the thing about math.max is, let's try it. I'm going to say console.log and say math.max. And if I put some numbers in here like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 77, right? And negative 32, okay? So if I say math.max, then if I run this, actually let me console or comment this out so it doesn't fill the console there. And you can see here that at the bottom it gives me 77 because that was the largest number in this list, right? And I could make this 101, and then if I run the code again, you can see it says 101 this time. Now the problem with max is it requires a list of parameters. So you can put as many parameters here as you want. It's kind of silly, right? As many parameters as you like. And what it's going to do is pick out which one of these items in this list of parameters is the greatest. So that doesn't accept an array, right? Like if you put an array in here, then it's going to say nan, right? Because it's like, hey, this is not a number, right? It's an array of numbers, right? So that's kind of a different thing. So what we can do though is if you use the rest operator, that's the ... And the rest operator says, take all of these numbers in this array and spread them out as parameters. So it's kind of like if I put the ... here, it's like I've taken the square brackets off of the array. Okay, so let me put that back in there. Right, and then we'll run it. So if I do ... and I have an array, then it says 6 is the greatest number in this list of numbers, right? Okay, great. So if that works, now if we just had an array of all the fares, then we could find the greatest fare, right? Pardon me. Okay, so let's give that a try. So what I want to do is get a list of the fares first. And what I think I'll do is I'll make a variable here. I'll say const fares equals, and I guess I gotta get rid of that extra parentheses there. And then I'll take all my fares here and I'll put them here. So I'll take the array of fares, spread them out, or deconstruct them with the rest operator, and then max will tell me which one of those fares is the greatest. So I'll run my code here, and you can see someone paid 512.3292, I'm going to assume that's pounds, right, for a ticket on the Titanic, right? So your problem now is to find the min fare. Who paid the least fare? And I'll kind of get you started here. Essentially, you want to call math min like this. And min works the same as max, but it just returns the smallest value or the minimum value. Okay? Yeah, so hopefully give that a try. Here's a solution. I'll do ... fares to spread them out, and then this should give me the min. Oh, 0. So someone didn't pay anything, I guess, right? So there we go. Actually, here's a challenge. Could you find the smallest fare that wasn't 0? So I'm not going to do that solution here, but I'll outline it for you. First, use filter to filter out all of the passengers where the fare is not 0 or is greater than 0, right? And then do this, right, on those fares that are left over. Then map all the leftover fares to min like this, right? Okay, so what else could you do here? This fields thing is kind of a problem. Like every time you have to get fields, what if you didn't want to work with the fields? Like you wanted to just be able to say passenger.fare. Well, you could use math, or you could use array.map to map all the fields. So for example, you could say fields equals data.map, and then here you would have a passenger, and you could return that passenger's fields, right? And then that means down here, if you were to use fields.map, then this passenger would actually just be the fields object, and you could get the fare from that passenger. So this should work the same as it did before, right? But that's just another look at map. The key thing to understand about map is that it is a method of array. So we call it on an array. So data is an array in our case. It takes a callback as a parameter. So you put the callback here between the parentheses. And then map returns it returns a new array that are made up of items that are generated by this map function. So the mapping function here takes one of the elements from the array here, a passenger object in our case, and then you decide what it returns. So the code that you write here is going to determine what ends up in the array that is returned from map when the process is done. Okay? So anyway, so I'll leave that for you to study, and we can use that to solve some of the Titanic problems. Okay?